Welcome back to Lit Vibes Only, where we lit the shit out of books we love and hate. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Kelsey.
And we're so glad that you're back for another episode. This is going to be our Lit Rex episode for LGBTQ plus History Month. So welcome.
Follow us we're on Instagram at Lit Vibes Only _podcast. I've gotten a hang of this. And YouTube and TikTok at Lit Vibes Only podcast. You may also email us at litvibesonlypodcast@gmail.com. We are also still offering the first 50 positive reviews that we get on any major platform, which typically is Spotify or Apple, a free sticker that we will send you in the mail. And Amanda, do you have them nearby, actually? Our stickers?
I don't, unfortunately, but you can go to our Instagram and you can see pictures of what these stickers look like. It's our logo,
Yes,
but like in sticker form.
Yeah, it's super cute. Again, shout out to your brother who created that.
Yes. Follow him at Art Messiah on Instagram.
He's one of our fearless, what do I want to say? Followers.
Fearless followers.
So in order to do the positive review, all you have to do is do the positive review on, again, Apple, Spotify, or any major platform for podcasts, and then send us the review via one of our socials or Gmail. And then we will send you your sticker. Make sure when you reach out, you're also giving us your address so that we can send it. All right.
Absolutely.
I'm moving all over the place, but now we are going into our Dob of the Day, which again, if you are new to us and are not part of Book Talk, this is where we share our drink of the day, our outfit of the day, and our book of the day.
Yes.
So Amanda, would you like to do the honors?
I would love to. And I feel like this lovely water jug is going to make so many appearances on this podcast.
It's
because
cute.
It's very cute. For those of you who are listening and not watching, it's pink, and I take it with me pretty much everywhere. I am one of those people, primarily because I don't drink enough water, and this is one way to make sure that happens. So got a lot of water in here. I'm going to work out after this episode, so I'm staying hydrated. So I've got water with me. My outfit of the day. This will surprise absolutely no one, but I'm wearing yet another t-shirt. This one actually is a Columbia University t-shirt, and it's my dad's alma mater. So repping his alma mater. It's the other reason why I own it is because I shop a lot at TJ Maxx and Marshalls, and for whatever reason, they often have Columbia University gear. Like I literally just bought a Columbia University sweatshirt the other day from Marshalls. So it just also so happens to be my dad's alma mater. So it's great. And then my book of the day, which is a book I'm about to start reading, I have not started yet, is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Atessa Moshfegh. I believe I pronounced that correctly. And to my understanding, the book is about this young woman who kind of has it all. She lives in New York. She's, beautiful and wealthy and well educated, but she's in a rough spot, and she has decided to basically sleep for a year, basically go into a year of hibernation. And I'm excited to read it because I've had several friends read it in my book circle, and they've had mixed reviews, and I kind of like when that happens because it makes it all the more intriguing for me. So I'll keep y'all posted.
Which is why we have this podcast.
Exactly.
We like that we have different reviews.
We love that we have different opinions and different tastes. That is why we are here.
Yes. Nice. Thank you. Where do I start? Oh, we start drink of the day. I'm getting all mixed up today. I'm like, I don't know what is going on. So in light of celebrating LGBTQ plus, is it History Month, right? I wanted to make a colorful rainbow drink, which was the attempt of this. So at the bottom, you have I don't like artificial flavoring and stuff. Okay. So I try the recipe showed me what to do for with the artificial flavorings and stuff. But right now I have the tart cherry juice, that they say is helpful to go to sleep. Then I have orange juice.
Okay.
And then I actually put, what is it? Tonic water at the top, but I use these like natural food coloring.
Okay.
And because you cannot get anything blue like that is in drink form. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, was looking at the store and was like, there's literally nothing. And so
Mhm.
I don't know if this is going to taste good at all, but I'm going to try
Okay.
it.
All right, Kelsey's rainbow concoction.
But now it's turning a little deep. It's more like pinkish on
Yeah, no,
my
you've
end.
mixed it. All right, here goes. Taste test. Lit it or quit it. Love it or hate it.
I don't love it or hate it. It's kind of
Okay.
mid.
Okay. All right.
That's yummy. It's all right.
All right. I like that we have this
Okay.
creativity going on with your mocktails.
Now,
It's fun.
yeah. Now, for my outfit of the day, I'm wearing that Vuori
Oh
sweater. Did
yeah.
I wear
Hmm,
this
hmm. I
before or
feel like
did I just
you
talk
wore it
about it?
last month. I think no, because we were talking about how cozy it was. I'm pretty
Yes.
sure. And you like bought it
Uh,
for your honeymoon. We're on the
yes.
plane.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
And then my book of the day, I am getting in the mail this book that I had to find from I don't know what they're called, like just like kind of like an Etsy seller. That's
Okay.
someone that is like selling a book that already went out of print. And
Oh.
the author, Penn Cole, is switching to a more well-known publisher. And so they stopped selling the book and
Oh.
now they're like switching over. And I think the books are coming out again in December, but it is a 4-part series and the 4th book is not out yet. And so they're going to be publishing with this new publisher. So I
Okay.
started Spark of the Everflame, and it's a fantasy book.
Of course.
And it's been all over TikTok recently. And I just wanted to get into this world. And I read the first book and loved it. And then I realized that she was switching over to a new publisher. And I was like, what the fuck? You can't get these books anywhere. And
Oh
so then I
no.
had to find it online, like for people who were like, knew this was happening and bought a bunch of books and then now is selling them online. I was like, great. And so I was able to find the 3rd one on Amazon because
Okay.
they still had copies or something. And the 2nd one I had to buy through someone who just had the books and was selling.
Wow, that's like a lot of effort. I hope
Oh,
it's worth it. It
it
must be a really good
was.
series.
I really liked the first one. You would not like it. I already know. You would not like it. I liked the first one. I read it in like 2 days. It's a
Whoa.
super easy read. Yeah, really liked the characters. I won't get into it. But anyway,
Okay.
I am starting to read Glow by Glow of the Everflame by Ken Cole.
Awesome. Well, anytime anyone's going to those great lengths to obtain a book, even
I
if it's like
really
not
hope I
something I
like
would
it.
read, I have mad respect for that. Like that's very cool. Okay, so yeah, this is our October Lit Rex episode, and we are
Woo, woo.
celebrating LGBTQ plus History Month. Essentially, this month we are celebrating the history of the LGBTQ plus community, including their contributions, LGBTQ plus events, and revolutionary icons. And it also recognizes the history of the gay rights movement. So, in honor of LGBTQ plus History Month, we're going to be sharing a couple books that tell stories of the LGBTQ plus community, uplift and celebrate their experiences. And as we said last month in our first LitRex episode, something that's really important to both of us is to share and celebrate voices of groups of people who are often silenced or marginalized or oppressed. And so we really hope that our lovely Lit Vibes Only community members will be encouraged to check out some of these books and authors and expand their worldview and their perspectives a bit. So,
Well
Kelsey,
done.
why don't you jump right? Thank you. You're so kind. Why don't you jump right in with your first book? Tell us all about it.
Yes. Okay. So, as a reminder, Amanda and I live in the Seattle area. And yesterday, I was out and about in the Fremont area. And I knew that we were doing this episode, and I had been like thinking through all the books that had like LGBTQ plus representation, but I wasn't like feeling any of them for this recommendation because they just were like either side characters or just not like a main focus, or the author themselves don't necessarily like actively promote this diversity. So I just randomly came across this bookstore, and I think it's fairly new. Like, I don't have you?
I've never seen it in Fremont, so it must have been,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's on the main strip in Fremont.
Yeah.
And it's called Charlie's. And this is just a free plug, Charlie's. I would love for you to get some clientele if they're out there. But Charlie's, they gave me a bunch of bookmarks, and it says queer books and gag worthy gifts. You can follow them at Charlie's Queer Books. And I walked in and I was like, I can find some books in here. It was just like, so I love it when life does that to you.
Yeah.
What is that called?
Serendipitous.
Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. It's just so serendipitous. And so I was looking and looking through their books, and I came across this one, A Dash of Salt and Pepper, which is a romance book, which I like to try to stay in my recs of like romance and fantasy, because that's fun, because you stay in your genre mostly. And you're going to hate this cover.
I mean, it looks like a romance cover, so
I know the romance covers, like, honestly, they used to be so awful, and
they're still like, awful, but
no, they're not the same, because
they're a different kind of awful.
Also romance used to only be like the Fabio type, like muscles on the cover, and like those types of men in these books. And I'm so glad that like romance has gotten a new vibe. I don't know how long that has been the case, but it's been more of a modern take, I feel like, more recently. And anyway, that's how we have these covers like this. They go real hard to like the theme, because they are both working in a kitchen in this book. And so anyway, I will go into the author first. His name is Kosoko Jackson. And learning a little bit about him, he writes YA, but also some adult fiction. And he's written romance, but also sci-fi. And I haven't read this book yet, but I would love to read some of his other books. Because some of them are sci fiction, right? And I saw on his website one that looked quite intriguing. And so he grew up in the DC metro area. So he's from the United States, and his debut release was called Yesterday in History. And that just came out in 2021. So he's a relatively new author. I think he works in media and then does writing on the side. And he's well known for being like a vocal champion for diverse characters. And so all great things that we're looking at this month. And so to dive into what A Dash of Salt and Pepper is, I'm going to start with the tropes that I know are in this book. That we've got enemies to lovers. We've got forced proximity. There's also a slight age gap in this one. I normally don't like an age gap when we're talking about like contemporary fiction, but it just depends.
Okay.
And it's also Grumpy Sunshine.
I don't know what that means.
So that means the two lovers are, one is a grumpy person.
Oh, got it.
One is all sunshine.
Got it. Love that.
And that
dynamic.
is like a big trope in romance. And so all of those really are. And so basically the two main characters, one, Javier, he's down on his luck, and he has to move back to his hometown in Maine, which has like about 9,000 people in it, which is small, right? And which is why it's in a small town setting.
Yep, got it.
He needs a job and starts working for this chef who is a single father who owns this restaurant. And he's also really desperate for help. And his name is Logan. So Logan and Javier are the two main characters. And it goes on from there. And they find out whether or not they are made for each other or they're a little too different to be lovers. So I'm excited about this read.
Things are going to get spicy in the kitchen.
And exactly. Romance. It's so funny how romance novels do this, but yeah, they very much lean into the theme. It's like that is so important. It's hilarious. But so that's the first one. And I'm excited to read a new author that I just discovered myself.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Kelsey.
Amanda.
And I love the inclusion of, for folks who are in Seattle or nearby,
Oh yeah.
a local bookstore that we can go out and support. So thanks for including that. That's great.
Yeah.
So my first book, as with a lot of books, is something that I read with my book club a couple years ago. And the name of this book is Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. And one of the things that we really try to do in my book club and also here on Lit Vibes Only is read a wide range of stories, authors, perspectives, lived experiences, etc. And so we deliberately chose this book because we realized in our book club we hadn't ever read a story that centered on trans folks, trans people. And so Tori Peters is a trans woman. She's got her MFA from the University of Iowa and also has a master's in comp lit and comparative literature from Dartmouth. And in addition to authoring this novel, Detransition Baby, she's also written a couple of novellas as well, including Infect Your Friends, Loved Ones, and The Masker. I have only ever read Detransition Baby, so I have not read her other things, but based on Detransition Baby, I would assume that they're also great books to check out. And, there's actually not a lot of books, especially not a lot of popular books or well-known books that center on trans characters. And so when this book came out, there was certainly a lot of chatter happening. And it really kind of stoked the fires of the quote unquote trans debate happening in our country and other places around the world. And it's really interesting because Tori Peters has stated like that was not at all her intention in writing the book. And I found this quote from her in an interview with The Guardian where she stated, quote, "At the time when I was writing, I didn't know it would have this kind of response. I was just thinking about what was going to be funny for my friends and what was pertinent to our lives," unquote. So she very much was like, I want to write about what life is like as a trans person and what it's like for me and for those in my community. And like, this is not in any way me trying to make any sort of statement. It's just like, this is my life, full stop. And I really like that because I know for me, and I can be guilty of this, when I read a story about an individual who has identifiers that are different from mine or belongs to a group that is different from the groups that I belong to, there's a part of you that wants to read the book and then be like, oh, great. Now I have this understanding, this foundational knowledge of what life is like for X group of people. And I think that can be really dangerous because after reading one story or encountering one story, you now know information just about that one person. You cannot now speak to the lived experience of all Black people or all trans people or all folks in the Jewish community. And so I think it's important. I do want to say that because I know as we're doing these different Lit Rex episodes, it's like, yes, we want folks to engage with these texts, to continue to learn, to ask questions, but also keeping in mind, just because you read this book does not now mean that you know everything that there is to know, or that that particular experience that you read about is representative of all experiences for folks in that group. And so I think that's really important to point out. So about the book itself, it was published in January 2021, and it was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. And then on Goodreads, it also was nominated for Best Fiction and Best Debut Novel in 2021. So definitely well reviewed. Lots of folks really enjoyed this book and was pretty well received. It's a shorter book. It's like 337 pages. So something that I think is pretty accessible for most folks. And it essentially tells the story of three women, two of whom are trans, one of whom ends up detransitioning, hence the book title. So Reese and Amy are two trans women who are in a relationship. And for the most part, like things are good. They have a good life and good jobs, etc. And Reese really wants to become a mother. They end up breaking up or ending their relationship because Amy detransitions and becomes Ames and ends up having a romantic relationship with his boss, Katrina, who is a cisgender woman. She's divorced. She identifies as Chinese and Jewish American, and she ends up becoming pregnant by Ames, which is a bit of an accent because Ames wasn't even sure that that was still possible. So Ames then sees this as an opportunity for Katrina, Reese, and Ames to essentially form like this kind of unconventional family where they can kind of have this baby all together, right?
I see.
And,
Okay.
you know, Reese can finally become a mother. And so the story just kind of follows the messy, entangled lives of these three characters as they kind of figure out how to be both as individuals and together. So, you know, it explores the ideas of motherhood and womanhood and what that looks like for both trans and for cis women. You know, it also ties into that discussion, like how age plays a role in that, and then the different ways that motherhood can come about for women, and then also focuses on the themes of gender and sexuality and relationships. There's a little bit of race in there as well, discussions around race. And so I really liked this book because, as you know, like I love messy, flawed characters. I like when, you know, characters are making choices that I don't always understand or agree with. I just want to like reach through the pages and shake them and be like, what are you doing? So I really enjoy it. This is definitely more of a, I would say, a character driven book versus plot driven, although the story does move along and different things happen. But it really is just taking a deep dive into like who these women are as individuals, what makes them tick, how they relate to one another. And it really is just kind of this beautiful, flawed, tender mess and like the best way possible. So I think it gives you a lot to think about. And even though it does center trans characters, it's not just, you know, a trans story. Like there's so much more to it than that. And I think Tori really wants her audience and her readers to just interact with these individuals as fully formed, holistic, all parts of them, and not just silo them based on one of their identifiers. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed it. We had a really great discussion about it in our book club when we all read it. So yeah, highly recommend.
Yeah, that sounds great. I really appreciate the quote you shared from the author because so often, because we are often unrepresented, right? Like, or people who are marginalized, it's sometimes becomes like, oh, I want to write this book so that, right? So that something, so that people learn, so that what have you. And it just feels like sometimes that can be more prescribed, right? And come off in a very different way that's not organic. And so to know that this author was like, I was writing it really for me and just to kind of tell this story that just feels like more organic. And that just feels nice and beautiful.
Instead of it just being like a trans story, it's just a story about three women, you know, figuring it out. Anyhow, go ahead.
Okay. So moving on to my second book, which is funny because you've read this book. I haven't read it yet. It's on my Libby. And I think I'm getting it in the next 3 weeks or so. And then your next one, we both have read. So we got a little bit of a shakeup today. So my next book that I'm recommending is The House in the Cerulean Sea. And I have it here with me. Also, do people buy books when they only read them on audio? Do you do that?
I cannot answer that question because I don't listen to audiobooks.
Oh, that's true.
So, I could not tell you. I feel like I wouldn't. That seems like a waste, but
or like on your e-reader and then buy a book.
No.
Okay. There's tons of people that do that just to have it like on their shelves. It's really interesting. I wanted to have it for the podcast really, but also I really love the cover.
It's really pretty. I love the cover.
Yeah, it's a really cool cover. So I don't know. I'm supporting the author.
Yeah.
And I bought it
in
from
a local bookstore.
Local bookstore.
By all means.
Which like I almost exclusively buy from local bookstores. And I would even consider like Barnes and Noble still like it's obviously not a local bookstore, but it is like bookstores in general are just having this moment of like, are you going to stay? Are you going to go? Because of the shit that Amazon has done. The only time that I told you recently that I bought that book from Amazon because it was literally the only place I could find it. But those are like really rare and far between. So Yeah, I really try to support our local bookstores. Anyhow, tangent. TJ Klune. Full name, Travis John Klune. He is an author of fantasy and romance books. And that's what this one is. It's a fantasy romance. And he's actually from Roseburg, Oregon.
Oh, I didn't
So
know that.
pretty close,
Local,
pretty
kind of
close
local.
nearby. Yeah. And he often or always incorporates LGBTQ plus characters into his novels. And it's interesting. I found out that he's asexual and he often talks about the influence on his writing from that perspective. So that's TJ Klune. And which is interesting because you were like, oh, TJ could be a neutral, more neutral name.
Non-binary for sure. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah. And so you weren't positive that it was a man. So about the book, which also I'll give you space at the end because I try to leave. Well, one, I don't have the full context of the book because I have yet to read it, but I try to just give like a little short synopsis.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil anything on this episode.
Yeah, totally. So one of the main characters is Linus, and he works for this company that runs orphanages. And he, near the beginning, I'm assuming, he gets an assignment to go to, and how do you pronounce it? Mercius
I'd
Island.
I'd have to look at the book. It's behind me somewhere on my shelf. I don't remember.
It's an island that has that's an orphanage. That has an orphanage.
That has an orphanage. It is not
with
just
orphans
in the orphanage.
And while the orphanages are at the orphanage,
while the orphans are at the orphanage, you were
what did I say?
You said while the orphanages are at the orphanage.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Listeners.
I am so sorry.
Kelsey's having a moment. Please bear with us.
The orphans are at the orphanage. There is also a caretaker that cares for them. Whose name is Arthur. And so basically Linus's mission is to see whether or not the orphans here are actually indeed dangerous. And there's something about the end of the world, or that they might bring about the end of the world. I don't understand why they think this, but that is part of his overall mission. And however, he runs into Arthur, and I believe they start up a romance. And in the end, he really has to make a decision of whether or not he can essentially betray the orphans and Arthur because he knows that they're going to bring about the end of the world, or believes that they're dangerous. So that's kind of what this book is about. And I heard from you that it was pretty, what did you say? Like cutesy? There was a different word you used.
Yeah. Well, so when our book club read it, one of my friends described this book as twee, which was the first time that I had heard that adjective be used. And it basically, it just means like it's really cutesy and sugary sweet and feel good.
Which is
I
weird.
would agree with that.
Yeah, because I would not have gotten that from the synopsis.
Yeah. No, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a very cute story. And just to clarify, the orphans in question, the reason why they're kind of being monitored is because they have different powers and or magical abilities. And so they're in these orphanages being cared for the safety of everyone. And so he's going to these different places to essentially assess the individual children and make sure all is well. So yeah, he encountered some interesting characters at the orphanage on the island, and I loved it. I really did. It's very heartwarming. It's like a cup of hot cocoa on a cold day.
Yeah, can't wait to get into that. And it's basically, fall cozy season. So it's the perfect time to read a book like that.
It's the perfect time. Perfect time. Okay, so I will wrap things up with my last book. I think this is going to come as a huge surprise to folks to find that I am recommending. Wait for it.
What?
A romance.
Amanda.
This literally, I can count on one hand the amount of like contemporary like romance novels I've read in recent years, and this is one of them. And
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely loved it and was surprised by how much I loved it. So this is a book that many of you have
Nice.
probably heard of. It's quite popular for a good reason. Sometimes books are popular. I'm like, I don't understand why, but this one is popular for a good reason. It is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. And before I get into the book, I want to share a little bit of info about Casey because I learned a lot about them as I was doing a little bit of research for this episode. So, Casey is queer and non-binary and use they them pronouns. And they have their degree in journalism from LSU, from Louisiana State University. And they kind of like the first author that you mentioned, I think it was Kosoko Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
also write both adult and YA fiction. So they do a mix of both. And one of the really interesting things that I learned about Casey as I was prepping for this episode is that, like me, they grew up attending like really conservative evangelical Christian schools, which obviously, as a queer person, I'm sure pose a lot of different challenges for them. And they have talked about how writing a lot of the books that they have written, or all of the books, I guess, that they've written, has really been like a really cathartic and healing thing for them to write stories that center on queer characters and queer love. And they also hope that, you know, putting these stories out into the world will help other individuals, especially like queer teens who might be struggling with their identities, who might be struggling based on the communities that they find themselves in. And so to find representation of their lived experience and know that they're not alone, which I thought was really beautiful. And so another thing that Casey has in common with me and with both of us is have ADHD. And so in a lot of interviews, they talk about the ways in which that has impacted their writing and how like they don't write. I think they write in a nonlinear fashion. So I would love someone who likes to dabble in writing. I would love to like have a sit down with Casey and be like, yeah, tell me your process. Cause sometimes I feel super overwhelmed trying to write anything longer than like a short story. A couple of other books that Casey has written that you may or may not be familiar with include The Pairing, I Kissed Shara Wheeler, and One Last Stop. And One Last Stop actually in 2021 was one of New York Times 100 notable books for that year. So that's really cool. Red, White, and Royal Blue ended up becoming a New York Times bestseller. And also on Goodreads, won both Best Romance and Best Debut Novel in 2019. So
nice.
they're definitely an awarded author and someone who both critics and readers alike love. So I'm learning a lot about romance from Kelsey, but this is another enemies to lovers trope, or rivals to lovers trope. And it focuses on two main characters. The first is Alex Claremont Diaz, who is the son of the president of the United States, who happens to be a woman, which is awesome, President Ellen Claremont. And the other character is Prince Henry. I'm not going to list all of his last names because he has quite a few as a royal. And
Amanda, that's what we're here for. What the heck?
I apologize for letting you all down so horribly. So they have been longtime enemies. They have known each other since they were younger and have never gotten along. And basically, they have a really disastrous encounter at a royal wedding. And it also happens to be during like an election year for his mom. And so essentially, they're both forced to save face and pretend like they're besties to, you know, keep up appearances, to maintain, you know, diplomatic relationships between the two countries. And essentially what happens is that fake friendship evolves into something more.
Force proximity.
And and so I'll leave it at that. I don't want to spoil anything for our lovely listeners, but I really enjoyed this book because I didn't find it to be cheesy and cringe at any point. I love the fact that it celebrated and centered gay love. And I just found the writing to be like witty and smart and funny. Like I laughed out loud, like truly laughed out loud at several points when I was reading this book. I just found the characters to be likable and quirky, and they had like all of the little idiosyncrasies, including minor characters, which I love. I hate when minor characters are just kind of like stuck in there and there's not a whole lot of like intention given to them, or
Sure.
intention or attention, both. And so I really loved that. And, you know, it is a bit of a coming of age story because, you know, they're both, I believe, again, like early 20s, I think. I know they're in college. So early 20s, like late teens. And so there is an element of like coming into themselves for both Prince Henry and for Alex, like who they are, what their place is in the world, how their roles as being both a prince and the first son impact their responsibilities and duties, which can be in conflict with maybe things that they actually want and how they view themselves. So there's the tension between that, the tension between like, you know, supporting your family, but also trying to seek out your own independence and autonomy as an individual. Obviously, love is a huge theme, the sacrifices that we have to make for our family and for then the people that we fall in love with. And it does dive a little bit into race because Alex is half Mexican. His dad is Mexican. And so I know he and Henry have conversations throughout the book about how his life is different from Henry, you know, who's white, and how he moves to the world a bit differently than Henry does. And obviously there's a little bit of politics in there as well, because hello, it's a book like taking place partially in the White House.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of that as well. And then if you're not aware, there's also a movie that came out very recently in 2023 that you can watch on Amazon Prime. And for the most part is pretty true to the book. I won't dive into it here because we might be doing a Lit Scripts episode about that in the future. But if you are somebody who loves to read a book and then watch the movie, there is a movie. So yeah, that is my final recommendation. You will probably never hear me recommend a romance ever again. So
we'll see. We'll see about that.
This moment. But it's just a fun read. And again, something that's super accessible. It's not super long. You zip right through it and it just makes you feel good. It's just like a feel good book.
Yeah. It definitely is. I read this one back in July and I really liked it too.
Oh, that's perfect for like reading it during like the month of like Independence Day and all that good stuff.
Oh, funny. I didn't even think about that, but I was on my honeymoon.
Oh, that's a perfect like book for traveling for sure. Great. So those are our 4. So just as a quick recap, my 2 books were Detransition Baby by Tori Peters and Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston.
And my 2 books were Dash of Salt and Pepper by Kosoko Jackson and The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune.
Yeah. So if you do end up checking out 1 or 2 or all of those books, by all means, let us know on our socials, shoot us an email. So as a quick reminder, you can find us again on Instagram, litvibesonly_podcast. And you can find us on TikTok and YouTube at litvibesonlypodcast. And our Gmail is the same, litvibesonlypodcast@gmail.com. And then one final plug, again, we need those reviews. We want those reviews. We want to read those reviews. So please leave us a positive review wherever you get your podcast. Take a screenshot, send it to us on our socials, send it to our email, send us your address, and you will be the proud owner of a brand new limited edition
Absolutely
Lit Vibes Only sticker. Awesome. Well, that is it for us. So we will see you next Monday.
See you next Monday. Bye.